I'm really excited to be here. This is something that I'm really passionate about. I've been helping couples for about the past 10 years try to navigate faith crisis and faith transition and learn to deal with those kinds of things and creating an interfaith or mixed faith marriage in compassionate ways, because it's a really difficult thing, especially if you went into the marriage with the same religious affiliation and now have had to make some pretty significant life changes. So I am just going to give the beginning that I could probably talk about this for 6 or 7 hours because there's so much. It's such a complicated and complex issue. And so today I'm just going to be focusing on the very basics about strengthening the foundation of your marriage if you and your partner are going through something similar to this. So let's get started by first, if I can get my PowerPoint to move forward. There we go. Okay, let's just talk about a good definition for what a mixed faith or interfaith marriage is and how I define faith transitions or faith crisis. So a mixed faith marriage, in what I treat, is usually any marriage or couple, even if you're not married, that shares some kind of different religious affiliation, or one member of the couple is religious and the other member of the couple is not religious. And there's a really big difference in the clients that I've helped in terms of whether they entered into the relationship knowing that there was a different religious affiliation, and the faith crisis or faith transition happening after the marriage was already established. So they went into the relationship with the same religious affiliation, and then something happened with one or both of the partners where their faith changed, and now the marriage is a little bit different. So we talk about that in terms of there's been a change in what we call the marital contract. When you marry your partner, there's kind of these ideas and expectations about what you think your marriage is going to be like. And if there's a significant shift, like a faith transition during the marriage, after some of these expectations have already been established and agreed to, whether explicitly or implicitly, it feels really jarring. It can be really difficult for the marriage itself and for the individual partners in the marriage. So when I talk about faith crisis and faith transition, these are the definitions that I use. A faith crisis is either an event or a certain set of information that disrupts or changes one's previously held religious beliefs. So if something happens or you get new information that make you feel differently about your religious affiliation, that's what we would term as a faith crisis. A faith transition is when somebody leaves their religion altogether, either becoming inactive in religion as a whole or transitioning to another religion. So those are kinds of the definitions that we'll be basing things on as we get started and as we talk about stuff today. So there's different ways that we view religion, and the ways that we view religion and marriage are going to be really impactful on how you process through a mixed faith marriage. First, marriage is primarily seen as either a legal contract, something that you go and you sign that piece of paper and the government recognizes you as a married couple, and as a societal construct, which is the idea that the society has about what marriage is, what the function of marriage is, what the utility is. It's seen as a partnership by some people, whether that be a romantic partnership or a business partnership or some combination of those. And so one of the first questions you have to ask yourself is, what was my expectation and what are my beliefs about marriage as a legal contract and as a societal construct? But it's not just those two things. For people who practice religion or people whose marriage was based in a religious context, marriage is also a spiritual institution. So there's a spiritual bond between the couple, especially a couple that starts with the same religion. Sometimes in some religious contexts, marriage is a necessary step in receiving further enlightenment or growth or progression in the religious context. And it's also seen as a set of promises and plans from a specific religious standpoint. So if you enter into a marriage and the marital contract is that we are the same religion, we have the same religious expectations, we engage in the same rituals and practices of the religion, and then that contract changes, you have to start wondering what happens with that set of promises and plans that we had for that spiritual institution that we had planned for originally. Now, what I see in the couples that I work with, the biggest struggle comes in their marriage if there's an overdependence, and I can't stress that enough, an overdependence on a shared religion being the foundation of the marriage. That's when I see the most conflict with the couples that I work with. If the main foundation of their relationship is we have to be the same religion or we're not okay, that there aren't other things that help support or buoy up that marriage. And what I see in those relationships is that there's a false sense of intimacy that grows, that there's, okay, we share the same religion, so we must share all of these other same things as well. And so that false sense of intimacy that comes from just being the same on this religious standpoint can sometimes block or get in the way of real intimacy developing between married partners or coupled partners, because you don't really have the opportunities to learn to grow in differences, to be able to have difficult conversations and conflict that help you feel trusted and trustworthy with your partner as you grow together as a couple. And in these cases, sometimes what happens is that couples will end up moving away from each other instead of coming together if there's a faith crisis or faith transition, if the foundation of the marriage is that overdependence on a religious sameness. Here are some of the common challenges that I see with my couples that I work with who are going through mixed faith marriages or faith transitions in their marriage. And as I'm talking through some of these things, I really encourage you to write down some of the things that have come up in your relationship or things that you are concerned may come up in your relationship. So as we continue to talk, that you're able to really identify some of those roadblocks for yourself and for your partner. The first one is communication barriers. And this is a really common thing with couples in general. But sometimes people going through faith crisis or faith transition and their partner might feel like there's certain things that you can't talk about that you previously may have been able to talk about fine. I know a lot of the couples that I work with where the partner who stays in the religion and their partner leaves their religion, they have feelings of feeling betrayed or lied to, especially where they feel like that marital contract has been violated in some way. And so trust issues can start to grow from that as well. And this is a big one, I think, for both members of the couple, and it's feelings of loss, whether it's loss of financial support or community support, whether it's loss of that idea of what the marriage was supposed to be like or should have been like. And when I say loss, I talk about it in terms of what we call ambiguous loss. An ambiguous loss is different than a specific loss. A specific loss would be something like a death. Death is something that we have rituals and traditions and expectations about how we handle that kind of loss. But ambiguous loss, we don't really have that way of forming those expectations, of being able to grieve through the specific loss. There's not really a handbook on what to do on grieving the marriage that you thought you would have. Next, a lot of couples experience either taboo or social stigma around their partner leaving the religion or them leaving the religion. And so that might end up in losing some community or family or friend supports. And this is a big one for a lot of my couples. It may magnify existing relationship problems that have nothing to do with the fact that their marriage is now a mixed faith marriage. So they have to be aware, you have to be aware of what are some of the marital issues that we were facing before this was even an issue. Another big loss is a loss of a shared meaning, religious rituals or traditions that may have formed a part of your couple identity. And that might also lead to changes in your marital roles where there was an expectation of, one partner being a leader or being able to engage in certain activities that they're not able to engage in anymore. Next is financial disagreements, changes in community support or connection, which is something that I mentioned around that taboo and that social stigma, that you can have friendship changes or extended family relationship issues. So a lot of the couples that I work with report a feeling of they lose their community as they transition out of their religious faith, especially if a lot of their family members are active members of that particular religious affiliation. Co-parenting and parenting disagreements is a pretty common one. If one partner wants to be able to have their kids practice the specific religion and the other partner feels differently, a lot of times that can bring up issues about how do we resolve, what religious practices our kids do and do not engage in. So I really encourage all of the couples that I work with, and I encourage you, if you and your loved one are experiencing a mixed faith relationship, is learning to face these challenges with compassion and patience. If that's the foundation of the way that you guys are approaching this, then that's going to give you the most that you can to try to overcome some of the challenges that we just talked about. The first thing I want you to process and I want you to work on as a couple is trying to hold space for each other's feelings. And I like to think about it like we all have feelings and thoughts and opinions and experiences in these, invisible jars that we carry around with us. And when you sit down with your partner, it's hard because you've got these two jars that are coming together that are sitting with each other. And if we're trying to both talk about our experiences at the same time, it gets really muddled. So holding space for your partner's feeling means taking your jar of stuff and kind of putting it on the shelf for a second, and then both of you together sorting through your partner's experiences and then trading so that you have an opportunity to really be heard. Your partner has a real opportunity to be heard. And that way you don't feel like your partner's view negates your own or vice versa. There's room enough in a healthy marriage for both lived experiences to be seen and to be validated. The next thing you have to learn to do is how to have hard conversations in soft ways. Having a mixed faith marriage means sometimes disagreeing pretty strongly about things that you hold really close to your heart, things that are really significant and important to you. So learning good communication skills is really vital. I could do probably another 7 hours on a webinar on just communication skills alone. But if you feel like you guys are stuck, you and your partner are stuck in not being able to communicate effectively or resolve conflict effectively, I really encourage you to seek out a trained therapist, specifically a couples therapist, to help move that process along. And then each partner needs to have a support network. And I'm very specific about the people I tell my clients to look for in their support network. If you've decided to work and put your energy into making your mixed faith marriage thrive, you want to be sure that the people in your support network support you as an individual, your experiences, the things that you're going through, but are also supportive of the marriage being successful. I've seen a lot of clients run into struggles when they've reached out to either family members or friends or community members, and they get the individual support, but they're not getting the support for the marriage. Those people tell them, you should just leave, it's not worth it, that they aren't supportive of the marriage being successful as well. So it's really important for both you and your partner to find loved ones that you can talk to, that you can get that extra validation and support from, that are supportive of both you guys as individuals and as the marriage being successful. And this is a really big one, because I think sometimes when the marital contract changes, when people go through faith crisis and faith transition, there's a lot of pain that can be experienced. And I see this in every couple, every client couple that I work with, that both of them are really struggling, that it's a really painful experience to have to deal with some of that ambiguous loss. If you're able to keep in mind that you're going through pain, your partner is also going through pain, then you're able to remember that, I can hold some of that space that we talked about, that we can both be struggling at the same time and have empathy and validation for each other, even if we don't necessarily agree with each other's religious affiliations or the choices or transitions that are being made. That you're both struggling and you both want to be able to support and love each other through the pain that you're experiencing. Now, one of the themes that I see a lot of as my clients go through some of these issues is the idea of authenticity.